Hello and welcome. My name is Megan Raymond, and I coordinate events programs membership here at WCET. Thank you so much for joining us for this webinar today. We'd love to hear how you are and how things are going where you're at today. As we go through the conversation and you have questions, I know you're going to have lots of great questions. Please enter them into the Q&A. We don't want to lose track of your questions, but we do encourage you to be active in the chat as well. But if you do have a question, put that into the Q&A so our moderator can keep track there. Kim has shared a link to the slides, and we will follow up after this session with a link to the recording and share any resources. WCET is committed to accessibility. If at any time we can do anything to make this webinar more accessible for you, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Today's webinar is Innovating with Information, Microcredentials, Badges, and the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library. This webinar is hosted in partnership with our friends at the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library. And our moderator today is WCET's Executive Director and the Vice President of Digital Learning for WCET, which is WCET's parent organization. Please welcome Van Davis.
Thanks, Megan, and good morning or good afternoon, depending upon where you are today. I am thrilled to be moderating today as we bring together friends from both institutions and the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library to talk about what it means to be dealing with an ecosystem that is no longer linear in nature, where a student goes to college, gets a degree, and then goes to work, but is rather cyclical as folks dip in and out of education and dip in and out of careers. I was just on a conference call with our steering committee at WCET, and somebody made the comment that they were on their third career, and it made me stop and think that I believe I'm on my fifth career now. And if there was ever an argument for how we dip back and forth, my career trajectory is probably that, because I certainly am no longer a historian or in the classroom these days. So I am thrilled to be able to moderate today. I'm really excited about this conversation. I'm going to ask our speakers if they would introduce themselves, and I'll start off with Holly Zanville.
Hi, everyone. I'm Holly Zanville, and so glad to be joining you today. I'm the founder and lead of the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library and a research professor at George Washington University's Institute of Public Policy, following 15 years as a strategy director at Lumina Foundation, and before that, 2 decades of system-level work in Oregon and Washington. So, Van, I too have had many reinventions in my careers.
I think I'll go next. I'm Kristen Vancello, and I serve as the Assistant Vice President for Innovative Education and Partnerships at Florida Gulf Coast University, which is Southwest Florida, where we too were in the 40s this morning. I am originally from Michigan and am a proud Michigan State University graduate 2 times over. I've worked now in the higher education field for 29 years, which is so hard to imagine. So my career has my path, my passion for higher education has never wavered. I have not left a college campus since being a student right out of high school. And so while my jobs have been plentiful, my career of higher education has never wavered.
And I'll go last. I'm Sharon Manna. I'm the Dean of Marketable Skills and Digital Badging at Dallas College in Dallas, Texas. We did have cold weather. It is warmed up today, but it was down in the 30s the other morning, which I'm from the Northeast. I was born in Canada, so I have polar bear blood, and I appreciated that. The summers, not so much. Van, you said you were a historian by trade. I'm a political scientist by trade. And over the last several years, I've found the skills that I've developed through that training to be really valuable in the new things that I do, which are not necessarily connected to the discipline.
Well, thank y'all. And I think that probably is a through line for many of us on this call today, that the skills that we learned are probably very relevant to us if our discipline is not relevant to us any longer. Holly, I'm going to start off with you, and if you could tell us a little bit about the library and the sort of work that y'all are doing and the sort of resources that are available for folks there, because it is a treasure trove of information.
Thanks. I'm so happy to start out. So this is the main page of the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library. We're a free digital reference collection that offers content in a number of categories that I'm going to show you in a minute. We also offer hub services for organizations that wish to share resources that do support innovation across the ecosystem, and I'll share that in more particulars in another minute or so. So this is what you see when you come to our main page, and you can select any of 12 languages in which to read our content. A report we're actually working on right now tells us that our content has been viewed in 10 different languages, and visitors are coming from several countries. So that we can get to today's focus on micro-credentialing a little faster, I'm going to skip over the history of the library's origins actually in philanthropy world, and I'm going to skip the story about our AI bot graphic, but know that the slide deck is going to be available after the webinar, so you'll have this information later if you'd like to look at it. So we're going to skip ahead to a slide that is going to look at the specific categories of our content. Thanks so much. So at the library, we are organizing our collection around several types of content, including an index, glossary terms, key components, topic briefs, initiatives, organizations, and an archive. If you visit us today, you're going to see that our index is now at 1811. So literally in the last week and a half, when we had pulled this slide, we've added another 70 or so artifacts to the collection. And that represents just how quickly things are happening in the information world that we're all working in and trying to keep up with. So next slide. We organize our collection around 12 key components of the Learn and Work ecosystem, like, please stay on the wheel for a moment. If you could go back to, yeah. And the ecosystem components are things like credentials and providers, policy, data and data systems, verifications and record keeping, employers and workforce, quality and value, communications and technology. I'm not going to mention all 12, but I hit a lot of them. These components are highlighted on this wheel graphic, which is on our main page, and there are written descriptions that go with each component. So when you go there, you'll be able to see what actually is really being covered and what do we mean by all these areas. We actually came up with these 12 after surveying 300 experts nationally and some internationally to ask them this main question: what do you think are the most important components of the Learn and Work ecosystem? And when we looked at all the answers, it guided us to these 12 areas. But to really have a healthy ecosystem, which is what I think we're all striving for, all the areas of the ecosystem have to be connected and coordinated and working well. Even though most of us don't work in all 12, we work just in some of them, but we have to think about the entire system and how well it's actually working, because we want individuals to be able to move seamlessly throughout the marketplace using lots of different kinds of credentials to communicate their skills and their knowledge acquired from lots of different sites, like school, like work, like service and self-study. We want schools to be able to count learning that is obtained outside of academic settings toward a degree or credential. Employers need to have more detailed and externally validated information for their hiring and reskilling and upskilling worker efforts. And the public needs to be informed about the Learn and Work ecosystem. So that means we all have to pay attention to the wheel, both the innovations and the outcomes throughout the ecosystem. So the next one. I already mentioned that the library's content is changing rapidly. And if you visit our main page right now, right above the wheel, you're going to find this document. And could you just stay on that document? Thanks. You'll find the latest monthly editions for glossary terms. topic briefs and initiatives. And we put this here because some folks that we deal with wanted an RSS feed because they wanted to know when is new content coming to the library. And we felt like nobody needed a whole lot of emails from us. So we basically are making it a little more obvious so people can scan down and get a sense of the diversity of new terms and topics and initiatives that are constantly coming to the fore. So we want you to know that there's a page there if that's the kind of thing that you're really interested in. So next one. So to show you what a content piece actually looks like, if you go to the next slide, we pulled an entry from our organizational section for WCET. And you can see the type of tagging that we're doing for all of our content pieces. We provide an external link, if you see that up there toward the top, which will take you to the WCET website, to the organization, and there are lots of relevant resources. And every artifact or every piece of content we put into the library will have this kind of tagging. So, and it'll look like this. So the next one is to talk about a newer feature that we've introduced literally in the last 2 years called Special Project Partnerships. If you go to the next slide, thanks. The library has been entering into partnership with organizations to help them test the usefulness of our resources and services, which is something we really want to know. One of our services offering a neutral hub to centralize and share resources with members of the different organizations, not only with their members, but more widely at our library. And what's really fueling these partnerships is that many of the organizations that collaborate through coalitions or pretty large networks are finding it difficult to sponsor a hub at their own site. Some of the big sites are gated. They're only open to members or they charge a fee. And they need a place where they can put resources that are free and open and that will centralize to serve these growing audiences. So we have entered into an agreement with WCET just a few months ago. So you'll see on the second row, there's a tile. And if you click on WCET and click on that, you'll understand what we're doing with WCT, and Dallas College is also one of our partners. So we entered into an agreement with Sharon and her colleagues to do some work that she's going to talk about in a bit. So we're very excited about these partnerships and expect that there will be many more partnerships in the future. So as I close my section on the library, and I just wanted to give you a very quick overview, what I really want to do is highlight some resources which might be helpful to today's conversation on microcredentials. So if you go to the next slide. I did a quick search. I put on my researcher hat and went to the library, and I typed into the main keyword search microcredentials. And I learned that we currently have 127 resources that come up, and that seemed like too much to go through. So I worked with our AI bot, and I asked the bot, could you group these 127 into categories to see really did it group? And so here's the answer I got. And it does group into categories that could understand the field from multiple angles, like glossary terms, like microcredentialing actual initiatives, like who are the organizations that are really active in this area? What are the standards and frameworks that relate to microcredentials? What are some of the policy, strategy, and research efforts that are underway? And what are some actual examples underway? So we think that our site, not to be too full of ourselves, but we think that our site is kind of unique in being a place where you literally can see how microcredentialing is unfolding across institutions, across states, across industry sectors, and across countries. This is not just happening in the US. There's a tremendous amount of activity that's happening internationally. So here's what it looks like. If you go to the next slide, when you type in to the keyword search microcredentials, and a number of tiles are going to come up, and you're going to get a sense, this is just some of them, you'll get a sense of the kind of content that is there around microcredentials. So then go to the next one, and I'm going to show you the importance of a hyphen, because the bot cannot distinguish. So far, we're trying to teach it, our bot is only like a teenager, that a hyphen, microcredentials, or written with a hyphen, it's all the same word, but it doesn't think it is. And for a lot of us that do research, we need to know that the AI bots sometimes cannot tell the difference whether it's hyphenated or not. So you get a different search coming up depending on whether or not you put the hyphen in. And this is important because mostly the nations outside the US tend to put the hyphen in. And the ones inside the US, although it's a mix of, like US always is a mix of things. So you really have to pay attention to the specifics, into the weeds about what you get. But we do want you to know, here's the kind of thing that you can get if you do a search at our library when you're looking at that. So a big question before us is, are we done with our microcredentialing collection at the library? Is 127 what we think is everything? Absolutely not. So we also asked the bot to tell us what are some important or underdeveloped portions in our collection by doing some searching outside of us. And we know then that there are some different areas that we're going to be having to be adding in the next year and a half, 2 years. One is around employer adoption and demand signals. This is an area a lot of people are interested in, but the field is still kind of thin of that. We think we're doing pretty good on glossary terms, but we think that we need more information about how employers are actually adopting or evaluating microcredentials. We know that there's some industry-specific acceptance patterns beyond the ones that we all look to, which is often IT, teacher ed, and manufacturing. So we need to go farther in those other areas. And there's more areas coming around employer ROI studies or talent pipelines. Also, we need to have more content around the federal and state policy activity. We know content's expected very soon on Department of Ed's rulemaking or guidance that's going to affect short-term credentials. We always going to have more information about alignment with microcredentials. We're going to see more from federal and state funding models around skills-based pathways, Pell expansion pilots, LAR ecosystems. And we're going to see more internationally around system-level credential frameworks coming. So stay tuned. We think that these gaps matter because this is a moving, active field, and we're going to want to capture as much as we can at the library for everyone who's working on credentialing. So that's as much as I'm prepared to cover right now. I'm looking forward to the questions later on. So Kristen, I think it's up to you to tell us what you're doing on the ground in Florida.
Thank you so much, Holly. And it's so wonderful to be here with you and the other panelists and everyone at WCET. So let's talk about the power of and at FGCU. What does that really mean? Well, at Florida Gulf Coast University, we certainly provide our students and members of the Southwest Florida region and beyond with a quality education. And we provide them with a clearer pathway to a career. So let's talk about why and how we do that. As we get started, we establish the why. Why are we doing this? Well, we really are out here doing this work to close the perceived and actual skills gaps. We're here to support student success, focus on employment needs, provide upskilling and reskilling. That's what it's all about. The alignment is to workforce needs, emerging industries in our region. It's focused on the mission, and it's aligned with our strategic plan goals at the university. Engagement. Well, how can we be engaged? There are so many benefits to building relationships with our community and industry partners and helping our students understand the ROI and how to transition from campus to career. It's so important to define the terminology that we're using in microcredentials. As Holly just mentioned, there are hundreds and hundreds of different definitions out there. The importance of that is to have clarity and understanding, how are these definitions different and how are these credentials different from other offerings and credentials offered out there by our own institutions and by others who are offering similar or different programs. Who are our audiences? Are they students at specific levels? Are we trying to engage populations that are not currently served by institutions? Is this really geared towards our current workforce to help them upskill or reskill? And how do we invite the employers to the table? At FGCU, we specifically seek to align each of our microcredentials with the employer needs. We have to know directly what these are in order to respond appropriately. So let's talk about the definitions. At FGCU, we have described and defined microcredential as being competency-based, defined by industry and or our community partners. We always assess them, and we offer them outside of traditional degrees. We also recognize that this might not be the microcredential definition across the board. Microcredentials are the learning experience, and digital badge is the visual emblem. So essentially, when we first got started in this work, we were using those terms interchangeably, but they're not interchangeable for us. So how do we define digital badge? It's what the student or participant can share publicly, and really anywhere that a link can be embedded. And so within them, if you're using these digital credentials already, the metadata really helps the student or the learner describe exactly what knowledge, skills, and abilities were mastered and how they did that. And what's nice is that it's verification of the skills that students have achieved. I surely wish that my college transcript had this so that you never have to go back and try to remember exactly what each course, all those student learning outcomes and program learning outcomes were as you pursued your credential. So this is just a visual ecosystem of FGCU's model. It demonstrates the collaboration between our faculty and the external partners. It shows that the learning experience happens in order for the student to earn the digital badge, and then how they can publicly share that digital badge. Our goal at the end of the day is for regional employers to understand the value of the digital badge. At FGCU, we have created 3 different types of microcredentials for 3 specific audiences. On the far left, you'll see industry readiness, industry-specific microcredentials. These are actually credit aligned. So you might remember that I said earlier that each of our microcredentials is outside of our curriculum. It is true. In this example, students would take courses to learn the specific content, the requisite content and information that you would expect a student to know. The microcredential is where they can really apply it in a real case study, a real employer-defined case study. And it is really designed for students at our university who would be taking credit-bearing classes as a first step. The middle category is designed for our undergraduate student population, and these are our transferable skills. Some of you may call these professional skills or soft skills or core skills, but essentially these are aligned with the NACE competencies, and they are to really help bring visibility to what we do teach our students across curriculum. Things like communication, things like teamwork, leadership, critical thinking. We know that this is inherent in our programs. We need the students to understand it, understand how to translate it, and be able to tell the employers about it in their interviews. The third is what you would probably commonly call your non-credit programming, or your programming that's designed for upskilling and reskilling through continuing education. And that's precisely what ours are designed for as well. But we find that while that might be for upskilling and reskilling and some of the folks that are in our community, it's also something that many of our students and our alumni gravitate towards as well. All right. So how do we do the industry specific? As I mentioned, this is really where we involve the employers in the identification of the competencies, skills, and abilities that they would be looking for from a student. The employer participates in the development of a meaningful assessment or a project, or some sort of a deliverable that gives them the confidence that the student can demonstrate that they have the competency. After the student has been able to go through that process, the employer also provides validation of the quality, and they have a desire to interview the digital badge earners. And so in this example, every single industry-specific microcredential that we have developed with employers has led to guaranteed interviews for our students. So let's talk about how you scale this up. I had the pleasure of working with peers through an UPSIA peer learning leader group, and we came up with anchor tenant as one of our terms that we're now all using very widely. So, it's really important to think about how to to test your theories, test your hypotheses, get that proof of concept. And so have that one anchor tenant. We started at FGCU with a large employer partner who had regional recognition and is actually a global company in the medical device industry. But when you have one proven model, it makes it a lot easier to show others what you're capable of doing and how you can address the needs of an employer in your community. We really listened to what skills and knowledge was missing. Very few graduates were applying for jobs at a single organization that were outside of the obvious alignments. So we expect students in clinical health programs to pursue a job in our healthcare industry. We expect students in our College of Education to go for jobs in our school districts, just like we expect a marketing major to look for a job in a marketing firm. But what about every other job that these organizations hire for? Students are not automatically thinking about those employers as they're looking for those first jobs out of college. So it's really about how can we engage these students, excite them about learning more. These are outside of curriculum. They're voluntary for students. So how can we really engage them in wanting to do more? And what is that ROI? How can we get them to focus on that transition from college to career and finding not only what that role or that career path will be in their future, but also learn a bit more about the culture of an employer and the values that they may or may not align with along the way. It's got to be about quality. We are having those conversations, as Holly mentioned, that align with some of our conversations about accreditation, that quality measure. How can we make sure that that is prevalent and inherent in the programs that we're creating? We want that outcome alignment to our academic programs at FGCU. To us, truly, that employer recognition and evaluation that has led to guaranteed interviews has been something we truly align our quality to. If we don't have that outcome of a student using this to launch them towards that career, we're not meeting the goal that we have set for ourselves in this work. Students who initially have pursued some of our non-credit programming because they really want something that's shorter term and easier to achieve are initially going for those non-credit programs, but they are considering coming back. These are post-baccalaureate opportunities and they're coming back and they're pursuing more of those stackable credentials. These are just some examples of partnerships that we have in Southwest Florida and examples of microcredentials. The ones that have the dark blue banner are all examples of industry specific, those course aligned examples. And the white one is an example of a continuing education microcredential. And what's fun about that one is it was initially created in partnership with our largest employer in Southwest Florida, Lee Health, and it was for their staff to have professional development. Today, the majority of folks going through that are community members and undergraduate students from FGCU who hope to work for Lee Health in the future. And students who go through that, anyone in the community that goes through that, are guaranteed interviews that have been mapped to 8 different entry-level positions with the organization. So just a fun fact. When we look at the value to students, we know that it's important for students to understand the value of their learning, the credentials that they're earning, and how to translate their experiences into that skills-based language. It is also important to help them prepare for those job interviews. So here are some examples of student success stories. They're able to share these badges and share their stories on LinkedIn and anywhere else that they are able to share that link, put that URL out there. On the next slide, you can see an actual badge image that the student put out on LinkedIn. And then on the next one, we just say, how are we ensuring that quality? Well, as I mentioned, having that verification by employers in our region or through industry recognized organizations, we really do believe at our institution that that is one of the highest ways that we can validate and ensure the quality of our microcredentials. Our focus is on specific competencies and the ability to apply the knowledge after completion of the program. And finally, people do ask us a lot of the time, how many badges have we awarded? Well, the majority of our badges awarded thus far have really been in that continuing education space. At FGCU, we do not believe that everyone should earn a badge, that everyone should fulfill the requirement and get the microcredential, the digital badge. It's not a trophy for participation. It's hard, it's challenging for our students. So we do have many individuals who begin a microcredential, but they drop off along the way, and that's okay. We are unhappy with the numbers. This year will mark a very large increase for FGCU because of our transferable skills. Back in 2023, when we launched the transferable skills, we were ready to scale up rather quickly, but then it was selected by our faculty to be our quality enhancement plan for reaffirmation of accreditation. So we had to intentionally dial back a little bit. But now that we've fully launched our QEP, we expect to have hundreds and hundreds of those earned by our students in this coming year. Now, I believe that my colleague Sharon has rejoined us. There she is. And so I'd love to hand it off so that you can hear a little bit more about how she has implemented microcredentials as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I had a very panic-inducing power outage, but I'm back. Again, I'm Sharon Manna. I'm the Dean of Marketable Skills and Digital Badging, and I'm probably going to share a lot of the same lessons and ideas that Kristen did, but in a very sort of baby steps kind of way, because we did use Florida Gulf Coast University as an example, and that's one of the big lessons of today. And I'll show you how we developed our own digital badging program within our own specific context, and one that starts not with transferable skills, but with marketable skills, which are the same thing. So if we could advance the slide. I think that one of the most important things for any program, let's go back one, thank you, is to always remember the value proposition and really just break it down. You're always remembering the students. Our why, that value proposition was how can we give students a toolkit with which to express all that they know and can do because of their time at Dallas College. And that why, that value proposition for us as a two-year institution really started by looking at student success data. Community colleges have admittedly not great transfer rates across the nation. Something like students transferring to a four-year institution to somewhere in the neighborhood of 16% nationwide. Dallas College is at about 18%, looking to elevate that by 5 percentage points over the next few years. But that still tells us that less than 1 in 4 students who intend to transfer actually do. So what are we equipping them with? And that really is the heart of our program. And we wanted to be able to have students understand that when they attend a two-year institution, they are not just checking boxes or doing their basics. They are instead developing important marketable skills that they have with them, regardless of whether they transfer to a four-year institution or they need to stop out to care for family. And so that was really the beginning of that. I had the opportunity to serve as a faculty fellow in our Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning and was able to give a research background to this in trying to convince our faculty to participate in this program. And that's a sort of a second very important element. If you want your faculty to participate, to buy into any new initiative or program, you have to ask them to participate. Let them be part of it. Let them create some of the outputs. Ask them, don't force them. Acknowledge the good work that is already being done. What we found through surveying faculty is that most faculty thought they were preparing students not only for transfer, but for future careers, but we didn't have a uniform Dallas College way of doing that. And so once we realized that there was an interest in helping students articulate their skills, then we also asked faculty to participate in creating our marketable skills inventory. Our marketable skills inventory builds on the core objectives that Texas colleges are required to assess. And so instead of sort of reinventing the wheel and starting from scratch or using some third-party inventory, we allowed faculty to curate our marketable skills inventory and update that. As time has worn on, we've amended that to align with Lightcast skills terms and align those with the top 100 skills that are in demand in the Dallas area. Again, we began with the end in mind. It wasn't let's adopt something that's happening outside Dallas. Let us start with the desire to educate students, to have them transfer, but knowing the realities that oftentimes they do not. So knowing that where you want to end up with and building backwards really helped the success of our initiative. So too, as Kristen mentioned, if you align with the institution's mission and strategic goals, that goes very far into convincing people to come on board. If we're doing things like getting stipends for faculty to implement programs. Dallas College's mission statement is transforming lives and communities through higher education. We have strategic goals about economic mobility, about student success during, through, and post completion. And so this initiative works very well with all of the things that the Dallas College Board of Trustees wants to see through 2030. And the last thing is don't reinvent the wheel. Look to people who have already blazed a trail. Florida Gulf Coast University served as one of our exemplars in establishing our program. Kristen's colleagues had published a white paper, what started out as a white paper and became a book chapter with 12, not quite easy, but 12 easy steps to establishing a micro-credential program. And we used that to kick off ours. We adapted the recommendations in that white paper to create our own Dallas College digital badging white paper. And that created a framework by which we could easily then deploy our program. Next slide, please. So our program had, again, as the heart, how do we get students, one back, please, to be able to articulate what they know and can do. And so that began not with technology, not with a digital badge, but instead with the Marketable Skills Initiative. And the Marketable Skills Initiative is implemented by our Marketable Skills faculty integrators, who are faculty in our core curriculum, full-timers, who are awarded a small stipend to participate and to apply a four-part framework that was built on, adapted from the great work being done at Georgia State University, to allow students to become aware of the skills they are developing in academic classrooms, to connect the coursework with those marketable skills, to provide opportunities to demonstrate those skills through particular competency-based assessments, and then to allow students to reflect. Again, we pay our faculty a small, go back one more, a small stipend for that. And once that year is up, they continue to participate. Every year we grow that group of faculty integrators, and we've implemented some of our digital badging, professional development to those faculty. Marketable skills framework came first, and then due to a desire on the part of our provost, we developed a digital badging program. And that digital badging program, we're in the first full calendar year of implementation. And we've been doing it in a phased process. And so our first phase included those marketable or transferable or durable skills that are developed in courses. And so it simply is an extension of that marketable skills initiative. Phase one of our digital badges also included digital badging for select co- and extracurricular programs, as well as a career readiness digital badging pathway. It's called the Career Explorer at Dallas College. Much like Kristen mentioned the QEP, your QEP is about those transferable skills. Our QEP is called Smart Start. It's about the first time in college experience. And in our first year in college experience course, we are incorporating 2 of those Career Explorer badges so that students become aware in their first semester of that possibility and then incentivize them to complete the pathway. Phase 2, which rolls out this semester, includes a group of sort of bespoke or unique academic programs. We're working with our Learning Commons and our English faculty on digital literacy skills. We are working with our new bachelor's in early education program for an etiquette and professionalism in educational settings badge. We've begun to look at in-house professional development badging, starting with my marketable skills faculty integrators, but also including new faculty onboarding competencies. And we're looking at select achievements that occur around the college. Next slide. Moving forward, what we're finding is that as we've adopted our framework, we've established our badging programs. Really now it is about continuing to make that value proposition. I said I'm a political scientist by trade, but I find more often than not, I'm working in saleswomanship. I'm always trying to convince people that this is the way to go. And so what we've found is that we really need to do a lot of work coaching both students and faculty on why these digital badges and credentials are important, how to use them, or how to encourage students to apply for them. And so for students, we've been working through our LMS. We use Brightspace. And so we've created a student training organization so students can have all of the information they need about what the badges are, why they're important, and best practices for applications. We are providing videos for them on best practices. We also have a community of practice in our LMS for faculty on how to create assignments that allow the demonstration of the skills so that students can apply for those badges. We are trying to work, and I'm working with the Learn and Work ecosystem library on making the connections across our transfer institutions. What we find is, just as Kristen noted, there are different definitions for what digital badge or microcredential might be. What we're finding is that at least regionally, it's important to have a common set of terms. And what we find is that in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, our transfer institutions and Dallas College aren't necessarily speaking the same language yet. And so that's the work I'm trying to do with the library, is to make clear what right now is a little bit opaque, because we are still in early days. The last thing we need to do once we establish those connections with our transfer partners is also to make those connections with our area employers. Dallas College was part of the AAC&U Curriculum to Career Innovations grant cohort funded by the Lumina Foundation. And we used our grant money to run 2 academic innovations conferences and bring panels of employers in to start making those connections. So employers could see the good work faculty were doing, faculty could see what the things that employers need to see from early career employees are. And those need to continue. We're going to broaden that connection with our Employer Resource Center. Our campus presidents are in charge of particular sectors. We have a sector strategy. So I'm going to be meeting with the presidents to get the word out that when employers are seeing Dallas College skills badges, that they are verifiable and reliable.
Well, thank y'all. Just to remind you, if you have questions, to please put those in the Q&A. We have a few in there already. I want to start us out, though, by asking each of the panelists to weigh in on this on a first question, then we'll move to the questions in the Q&A. And that is, if someone's thinking about launching a micro-credential program, where should they begin? All of you have laid out really important steps, whether it be the research process or whether it be the implementation process, but where do you start? It can be kind of daunting.
Well, I'll start to say, don't start from scratch. Now that so many resources really are available from our peers and certainly from the great resources such as those that Holly is highlighting, use them to your advantage, and start those conversations with your colleagues. For our institution, and Sharon, thank you so much for mentioning the book chapter that my colleagues authored. But we have that on our website, and I'm happy to share that address directly with our friends to give out to the group that registered for the webinar. But they wrote the 12 steps to start start an effective microcredential program. And I would say that we're probably ready to write the 12 steps you shouldn't take, as well as the next 12 steps and then the next 12 steps. And so we're ready to do that to help everyone along the way. But I really think that making sure that it's part of the institutional priorities is critical, because if it is not, then it's going to be very difficult to move it forward and have it be held at the same standard as anything else that the institution sees as valuable. And having to defend your role to colleagues or to folks across your campus is not something anyone should have to do.
Yeah, and I would build on that by saying that you have to remember that value proposition and what is it that you want in the end? Think about it in the analog, right? What is the thing that you want for your students or your area employers or your own staff? And then what does that look like agnostic of any tech? And then build that, and you're always going to be able to find the tech, but I would also say don't expect the tech to 100% align with what you want. There is no perfect solution, so you're gonna look for the most perfect solution, or the one that is acceptable for the things that you want. I also agree. Don't start from scratch. There are enough resources out there already, and you also could look for resources that fit your context. And so while we did look at Florida Gulf Coast University, we also looked at other community colleges that were embarking on similar programs. And so not every answer fits every question you may have, but there is a universe of resources out there. It is much more well developed than it was, say, 3 or 4 years ago.
And Holly,
and
you get to
well,
sit from the cross-institutional perspective.
yeah, and I would say I've got 4 or 5 things that I would do if someone came to me saying, "Can you help me set up our credentialing, our micro-credential program?" I would first want to know, are there other programs at my campus that are already doing it? Because what's happening is it happens in one area, like business or in veterinary technician areas, but not in the other areas. So like I would want to know, are there some other ones doing it at my campus so I could get to know whatever's going on in my campus. I would want to know what's the position of the accrediting organization that we work with. And I see that actually that Karen Solomon from the Higher Learning Commission is actually on the participant list today, and really glad. A lot of the accrediting organizations are paying a lot of attention to micro-credentialing and other types of non-degree credentials, whether they're for credit or non-credit. So there's a lot of great resources that are increasingly available at the accrediting organizations. I would, if you're in a state system, you need to know, does your system have policy? And no, because some of them have issued frameworks. SUNY has issued a whole policy. The faculty have got to follow the Board of Regents policies. And there are other states where the state legislatures have issued important policies. So it's important to know what is the policy in your state or your context. So if you don't know that, you find that out. And I think it's always good because you're going to be meeting with lots of other folks. Have a couple of examples of either peer programs or peer institutions. You don't need to have 50 of them. You just need a couple of other ones, like some of the ones you've heard about today. So you can either know who to call a friend, or share with people in a meeting. Here's some other examples of how these folks are doing it. And I would actually think about my discipline or my field. What will be the requirements if you're trying to do something in a STEM field versus some other kind of field? And what are the licensing implications for shorter term credentials, and how do they match up with additional programs? And I saw someone even had a question earlier about graduate level. So I would do a little bit of homework, frankly. And if you want to use our library, we hope that that's helpful to you. If it's not, we would love to hear from you. Like, negative feedback is good too. Like if you send Lucia Weathers is on with me today, and she's from Weather Strategy Group. And if you contact us and say, I look for this, I can't find it, we would actually like to know that, because we're going to go do what we can to provide better content. So those are the kind of things that I would ask some questions to be sure I've got the ground rules before I go too far down the road.
I love that. I want to pivot to the Q&A because we've got a number of really good questions. And if you don't have a question, or if you haven't paid attention to that Q&A, you can also upvote questions. That's really helpful as I go through and prioritize these. But I want to start with a question from an anonymous attendee. Do instructional faculty use electronic badges for gamification inside their courses? And do those intra-course badges compete with these institutionally validated electronic badges?
So I can give you Dallas College's solution, which I think is a bit different than other institutions. We are a Brightspace LMS user, but we don't use the badging within Brightspace. Our solution is with Parchment credentials. It used to be Canvas credentials. Our executive sponsor made the decision that instead of, as Holly mentioned, departments or different schools having badging solutions, we have Dallas College as the single issuer. And so for our skills and competency badges, students apply for the badges. They aren't awarded by faculty. Faculty have the important role in developing the content that allows students to demonstrate skills and to encourage and help facilitate the application of those badges. But that all runs through my office. And I say my office, it's me. It's just me.
Well, and I can add that we don't have, since they're outside of our courses, we really don't have any gamification or other things inside the courses. But know that conversations are happening where faculty are asking why they can't develop micro-credentials to go within our courses. So the conversation continues. Do we need another type of micro-credential? Do we need to change our definition? We're always going to be having those conversations.
The only thing I would add is often the industry certifications fall into this category. And of course, they come from the industry, the professional association, et cetera, and they sit outside of higher ed generally. But there'll be many disciplines and faculty who have good relationships and are tied in with their industry sectors. And they were trying to align some of their coursework or some of their testing for students with an industry certification, so their student can complete a degree or courses. At the same time, they may earn an important industry certification, which will help them find a job, et cetera. So the extent to which some faculty are engaged in that, they may be having certifications that are coming within technically the course, and others outside of that faculty member may not even know it. So I would just say, be aware of the growing importance of industry certifications as part of this whole micro-credentialing discussion.
Excellent. I love this next question because I think that this is top of mind for a lot of folks. From another anonymous attendee, are you finding that most employers are beginning to value micro-credentials naturally, or only the organizations that are in direct partnership with you to create targeted educational offerings? And are you seeing certain industries that maybe are positioned as early adopters of micro-credential recognition, or does that vary as well?
I would love to answer this question because I've got two fun things to share. The first is that just yesterday, I was in a conversation with a director of human resources for one of our employers in the region who we don't have specific micro-credentials that we've developed, but they were asking me about one that they knew we had developed with Lee Health. And they said, we really wanted something that was, was focusing on transferable skills for employees. And they said, but it sounds like you've developed this and you developed it with Lee Health. Can I see what that looks like? What was the framework? What were the outcomes? How were they assessed? I said, absolutely, we would be happy to share that with you. So I did. And he called me back about 2 hours later and he said, I just want you to know that I already talked with my team and told them that if they see this on an applicant's transcript, I want them to give that person a priority for an application. So it was a great example of how they valued even what another employer had made for them in a more customized fashion. And so that was something that was really, it was just yesterday. And so it was a wonderful thing. The other part of that I wanted to share is that we did such a good job talking to employers about this as a conceptual framework before we ever even moved forward to develop and go through the first step. We really engaged employers in the conversation from day one because we didn't want to go down the pathway of exploring this further if they weren't going to buy in at any point. And so we have more employers in the community asking when they're going to see micro-credentials on students' applications and LinkedIn profiles profiles, then we have students that have earned them. And so now, we're behind because they're looking for them, and we don't have as many that have emerged. And so this year is the year, like I said, that we really do expect many more of them to be issued to our students. And so I hope that I get to come back in another year and share with you what we are seeing.
So this next question, I think, is also one that may be top of mind for folks, and I'd love to hear both a 4-year and a 2-year institutional perspective here, and then maybe Holly, if you're seeing anything nationally, and that is anyone aware of institutions using microcredentials and/or badges to help drive student retention and persistence? I could envision these being awarded based upon both course completion and student behaviors. So in a time where we're all talking about retention and persistence, does this help?
I'm going to give the political science answer, which is it depends, right? Which I tell my students you can't put that on a test. Both Kristen and I referred to our QEPs. And so since we are building badges into the QEP, there should be some significant data collection to determine what the impact is of that. I would say not yet, because we're in early days still, but I think over a 5-year QEP period, we should be able to see whether or not, in our context, if participation and acquisition of those Career Explorer badges in that first year course, are those students persisting? Are they being retained? Those dashboards are being built right now. But again, those have to be built very intentionally, being able to measure that and that alone. One of the other things that we work on is we're an institution that uses Handshake and the First Destination Survey. We've been able to adapt our First Destination Survey. Dallas College has a research institute. It's one of the wonderful things about the college. And in their studies, they are adapting questions specifically for 2-year students. And we're able then to amend questions about the acquisition of digital credentials and if it benefited them in transfer, in retention, in transfer, in employment. But that is to come.
If
Kristen,
I could,
go ahead, Holly.
I just want to insert an idea, maybe confrontational, before Kristen goes, and to say, I actually think we should be reinterpreting the word retention to think about retention of employees. What's happening in employment world is a lot of folks are starting to lose their jobs, partly because of AI issues or et cetera. And retention of employees is going to be really important. And a lot of employees need upskilling or reskilling, or they need to be engaged in that, whether or not they're getting from employer-led credentials, short-term credentials, and or they're sending them and working in partnership with a community college or university and stuff. So I would say we ought to think broadly about that. And New York is a really good example because the SUNY system has put some special money on the table for professional development, particularly for upscaling with a number of employers in certain fields. And their biggest area of, as they've been counting their micro-credentials, which includes like certificates, their biggest area of production literally in the last 2 years has been coming out of that professional development certificate, which is for, I think, my read of those are a lot of employees, and a lot of it is about being retained at that end. So I would just say, think broadly when you think about the use of the terms.
No, that's an excellent point. Kristen, what about y'all? What are y'all seeing?
No. I mean, I really don't think that it is necessarily impacting our retention of students. I also hope that it's not discouraging them from staying in college, even if they're getting those wonderful opportunities for interviews earlier in their journey. We don't want to see students, not persist and retain, and persist to get that degree. However, we do know that students are not making the same commitment to their higher education journey as they have in decades past. And I am someone who more recently, before taking on the leadership for our microcredentials at FGCU, helped to develop an adult degree completion initiative about 8 years ago. And to see the rising number of adults who have some college and no degree pains me every single day. But it is a reality of what we're we're experiencing and seeing in higher education. So the more we can do to give short-term credentials, the more we can do to help them with their employability if they're not going to continue on that higher ed traditional trajectory right now. I think we're doing what we can do in a meaningful way. And I agree with Holly that retention within the workplace, so that they can have, a productive and meaningful life is so important. And should they need it and should they want it, they will return. They will return to our institutions when it's the right time for them. And so I want us to keep working towards that and keep helping them find the ways that it's the right time to come back for the right credential.
I love that. That is all the time we have today. I want y'all to thank me for these incredible panelists and this discussion that we had today. I'm going to throw it back to you, Megan.
Great. Thank you, Van. And thank you, Holly, Sharon, and Kristen. This was a great conversation. And thank you, Kim, for putting this all together for us on top of our annual conference, which was last month. Do visit the Learn and Work Ecosystem Library. What an incredible resource. We really enjoy getting in there and just kind of playing around and seeing what we can find. It's a great tool. I know you'll find value in it. And it continues to get better. And they are asking for your feedback on how they can continue to improve it and make it an invaluable resource. For more information, you can go to the website, and then Lucia did include the email address, and do reach out to them. So we're thrilled to partner with them. We will follow up with all of the resources that were shared, a link to the recording, and the slides so you can access them. And if this is your first activity with WCET, we have lots of events and programs throughout the year. Do check us out. We have lots of opportunities for engagement with members and with numerous partners in the higher education space. We'd like to bring you valuable information that you can use in your jobs. Save the date for February 26th. We're partnering with Quality Matters on a virtual summit. And then we are working with One Ed Tech on an accessibility workshop series. Applications are due, preferential applications are due by November 28th, and then they'll be accepted through the end of November, but check that out there. And then I want to thank our sponsors who underwrite much of what we do here at WCET. We're grateful for all they do to support our work so we can bring you just-in-time information. And lastly, our supporting members here at WCET who invest on a deeper level in the organization. So again, thank you for attending. Thank you for being part of the conversation, and thank you to our speakers today that put so much time and energy into presenting today. So we hope that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we'll see you in the new year. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.